6:30.
Yes.
Start with pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Jerry, you have the attendance?
Yep, everyone's present. Brad should be on virtually.
Is there?
There he is.
We have nobody virtually. You guys want to say anything as a get before we get started? You want to be a public comment? Okay, without the public comment, we'll move right to the presentation consideration of Department of Public Works Fleet Capital Management Plan.
Well, why don't we come up? Just.
So just a quick background for everybody. We took a look at this a week ago, and had some questions on it. And so we said, we'll bring it back up at the next time we get together, which is tonight. And we'll whether Bill, you want to say anything more, or Carl, you've got any more information you want to provide?
Just, it's a very it's a big number, but a very manageable number. Waiting for final numbers on the budget and revenue, numbers from Normwood over on the grand list. But, increasing the DPW, capital reserve to perhaps 90 or even 100,000. And it's one of those things, if you bump it up a little bit every year, we can pay this off just with those reserves, just these things in 5 or 6 years. However, if we were to put additional funds towards it, whether it's through surplus, capital non-recurring, I mean, there are several sources of funds. So this is about 600,000. If we were to say, fine, let's do this, let's take 100 from capital non-recurring. We have a very healthy account to put it down, just take 100 right off the top. And then we do this over the course of 5 years. It's a very manageable payment term. It's a way to basically borrow. Leanne should block her ears now, but I asked Leanne, I want to make sure she's okay with the financing method, but basically a method of borrowing from ourselves, not from a bank at 0% interest, of course. And so we would be funding on the operating side of the budget and then depositing into the off-budget account every fiscal year until this is paid off. If in the course of 3 years, Bill comes back and says, hey, need another 3 trucks, it's still very manageable. You're talking, let's say, another 600,000-700,000. The town at that point can choose to either continue funding it the way we're funding it. Maybe at that point, you're putting 125 to 150 into that capital reserve account, or you can choose to pay it another way. We've done this on a variety of items, fire trucks, this VACOL that you're going to take delivery of. I think we just paid for it all in one shot. So the town has been very fortunate in having budget surpluses over the years. We've been very fortunate in building our capital reserves over the course of years. And honestly, I actually don't even think it's a heavy lift to do this. And then as a plan comes forward over the next 2 to 4 years to replace other vehicles, I think it would fit right in. I don't think it's an issue, but those are my 2 cents. It's up for discussion right now.
Questions?
Bill,
comments?
did you want to add anything to that?
I think it's 100% going to benefit us to keep a newer fleet. I'm not saying it has to be brand new, but I mean, we've got 30-year-old trucks, and when they break, they break. So, I mean, new trucks break as well, but.
Got it. Okay. George,
I mean, just coming here, I mean, two things actually. So one, I mean, I commend you immensely for actually creating this, capital budget plan over 20 years, actually, if I remember what it was, in terms of just the age of the trucks and coming in and going out and so on. I think it's very good management, trying basically anticipate what the needs are, for large truck, which is, I think, is the main component of what you guys do. And so I fully support that. But to me, I mean, coming back to your point, Carl, and I think I mentioned this in the past, because I'm very new here, it's hard. I'm slowly beginning to try and understand, what is, how big is the surplus, how much we can fund and so on, right? And so, and for me, it's just trying to basically begin to try and balance, or balance is the right word, but basically, rate that versus another need versus something else down the road versus goals and so on. And I don't have a good picture, a good way of grasping that.
Yeah, wants and needs, right? There's a lot of both. I think this is a need. There's a lot of things we want. We want better parking and rec facilities, right? And we're trying to address that too. So, I don't know exactly how to respond to that. In terms of the amount of surplus every year, we don't budget for a surplus, but we know we actually kind of have one built in right now with the revenue we're getting from interest income. And I think we explained that earlier. We don't want to budget too much because at some point we're going to want to lower it if interest rates go down. So, I don't know exactly how to respond to that.
Yeah, no, I understand. No, it wasn't not to respond, actually.
Yeah.
It's just for me, I'm just trying to learn more, right?
Yeah, so one other factor out there that, over the last 25 years through 2 or 3 several sets of recessions and great recessions, the town's collection rate has always been higher than 99%, which is what we budget, is a 99% collection rate. So, I don't want to say we budget for a surplus because we collect 99.2 or so of the taxes. But there's no town that budgets higher than 99%, so we don't want to start pushing that either. Our state of Connecticut revenue, we tend to collect more than we budget, and I'm talking surplus right now. I don't want to get it, we don't need to get into it that much. But, we are going to have a surplus this year in all likelihood, unless we run drastically over on expenditures, which we don't foresee. That's a good thing because number one, the first thing we do is fund our rainy day account at 17%. That number last year was about $350,000 right off the top. Anything over and above that can be distributed towards, is that right? 350, I thought it was?
Yes.
About approximately.
Yeah, right.
I think it was 340 something,
Yeah,
as I recall.
You're right.
And anything over and above that is, I mean, I don't want to say it for grabs, it's kind of a funny way to say it, but
Right.
it can be, you can increase your reserves to 20% if you want.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, because the very next item on the agenda, right, is the elderly benefit recommendation, which is, I think the last time we debated whether 90,000, 100,000, I was actually sure what the number is
Yeah.
going to be, right? And to me, again, it's the same mental
Sure.
juggling act.
We have a little bit of information on that too. That might
Okay,
be
very good.
helpful.
Thank you so much.
other questions people have? So, my only question is, and I think they were answered last time, but I just want to ask them specifically, and that is in what was handed out. I won't go so far as to call this a plan, because if I call it a plan, then it would be like in stone. So this is your thought of how things may play out, without necessarily saying, we're definitely gonna need to do the 2026 dump truck. It's just, it may by then
It may by then.
get to that. So I think with that in mind, I can support the tonight's resolution for the 660,000. But I think it would be very helpful, when you have the time, to really kind of get the pen on paper so that we can see better where, when and where these might be coming out. Because I think that will just be helpful for us as a surplus comes in, as, you know, other potential funds might become available. But I think for now, I think we are, we're in relatively good order. We gotta take advantage of that, and given your description of what it is that we'll be replacing, I think it makes sense for the town to make that happen. So, Brad, I'm gonna assume you hear us, and if you wanna say something, you will say something?
No, I'm all set, thank you. I support the funding of the trucks.
All right, so what is the motion, when the document paper was handed out a couple weeks ago, is this motion still valid? Yes. So I'll read it, make a motion to make an appropriation in the amount of $660,000 from the Public Works Transfer Station Equipment Fund 3353 for the purpose of purchasing 2 large plow trucks in the amount of $265,000 each, or $530,000 for both, and the John Deere 333G compact truck loader in the amount of $130,000 for a total capital investment of $660,000. And further, to move this motion to town meeting. Is there a second?
I second it.
Any other comments people wish to make?
Just quickly, we're doing, just for some of the newer members, I won't just keep staring at you guys, but, we do the same thing with the fire department. We are putting about $175,000 a year, exactly the same way, funded from the operating budget, goes into an off-budget account. And last year, we spent, or not last year, several years ago, about $1.4 million on 2 new trucks. I think we put some money down towards that, and I think the payoff, I want to say, was 8 or 9 years on that.
10 years.
10 years. Now, you know, look, we can argue, and I think we said this Saturday, we can argue, not argue, we can discuss whether that's smart. Maybe it's smarter to take out a bond for 1.4 million at this $2 million. And those are generational items. Maybe we pay them off over 20 years, pay 5% interest. You know, that is definitely a different strategy than we're taking. But it is a strategy that towns use that may not have the ability to fund like we have the ability to fund. And I'll make a note, and Scott will remember this, when I came into office in 2012, fire department capital reserve was basically 0. And we built that to 175 a year, steady stream funding so that they could, and we've made quite a lot of purchases over the years like that, in 12 years. And it's really worked out very nicely. So we built it up, and we did this with Public Works probably about 5 years ago. We started doing this. So just trying to have the money available when we need it, built into the budget every year. And it's transparent. And, you know, I think it's a good method of actually paying for needs while the town has the money and it's in the budget. So, thank you.
We're ready for Johnson.
While you were talking, what came to mind is how.
So I shouldn't have talked, huh? I shouldn't have done.
True, good point. Came to mind what we do for the police department.
Similar.
We have a regular series of, and we know the rate of replacement. And I'm wondering if we have the same situation for the PW. If they can actually amortize their own trucks over that same time frame and finance it that way. Is there a difference?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a difference. The police vehicle turnover is 4 years, and these are 20 to 25. So what am I missing?
Well, I mean, to me, that would be even better, because your annual cost would be less.
Oh, you're saying, so do it over 20 years or something, right? I see.
Same way that the police department does over 4. If he's telling me that it's 20 years, you can amortize it over that time.
So the difference there is with the PD, we are actually financing it through a bank. That's what we did last time when interest rates were lower. So we budget up, and again, I'm using approximate numbers or close, 90,000 in the Department of Police Services budget. The chief, through the police commission, they budget additional funding because it's not exactly 360,000 for the police vehicles, but that is actually bank funding that we did through, I believe, Key Bank. That was the last time I checked. So it's a little different. In this case, we're kind of just going negative in an off-budget account. I don't think we'd want to, I don't think, quite frankly, the lady to my left would be thrilled with going negative for 20 years.
Okay, just a thought.
You're not 20 years now. We have $9 million in our unassigned fund in the general fund. We have over $2 to $3 million in our capital non-recurring accounts in general. So the money is there. We just are plotting how we want to fund this over the next couple of years.
No, I understand the difference.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And just to, kind of expand on George's point slightly, and that is to say, we, at some point, not during the budget time, but at some point, we should put together enough of a plan that we understand what the potential competing demands are. Right now, this is this, and who knows,
Yeah, across departments.
Right. So it would just be helpful, because then we know, okay, yeah, 90,000 makes sense, or it's gonna make sure that this doesn't happen. But we're not at this
Yeah,
point,
yep.
and we're currently in a good spot financially.
Yep.
So we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Wonderful.
And
Bill,
this-
thank you very much.
And one other thing, Mr. Chairman, this will have to go to Board of Selectmen and to a town meeting. So if you're an appropriation board, it's not finally funded until we take it to a town meeting.
Yep. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
time.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Next item of business is the consideration of the elderly benefit recommendation for FY 2025. Again, we had a discussion of this the other day. We pushed it back to this meeting for a vote. And I believe at that point, we were looking for either are we gonna be at 90, stay at 100 as we were this past year, and we're looking for a little bit more data about what the, how many families are served or anything along those lines. So we have more information.
So I don't know about the number of families served. I don't know that exactly, but I can tell you that the income levels, which was one of your questions, it goes from 0 to 53,400. So they have to, number one, meet that income criteria. And depends on whether they're married or unmarried, but the maximum tax credit for a married, for married is $1,250 to $250, depending on where they fall in that range to get a credit for their tax.
What were the numbers? How much?
1,250 to 250. So if they earn under 22,000, they can get a credit of an abatement
Yep.
of 1,250, or if they earn 53,400, they can get $250. So, and that is what they get for the state of Connecticut. So if they, let's just use the top one. Let's just say that they get 1,250. They get that. We have to, we fund that. We required to do that. This elderly benefit program is our match to that. So they could get up to the same amount through us. So 1,250 plus 1,250, 2,500. The other thing is, with regard to the amount of 90,000, that is, I mean, it's up to you whether that's sufficient or not, but, I think last year we, spent like, 65 to 69,000, and what we do, since this is our piece of the pie, we don't have to follow the state guidelines, but we use that as a benchmark. And then from there, we collected all the applications, came to around 69,000, and then we grossed it up to 90,000 for those people that qualified on a prorated basis. So, it was sufficient, the amount of 90,000 was sufficient. That makes sense?
That does, so would, in your example, would that mean then a household that was eligible for 1,250 from the town as our match actually would have gotten more than that, but in the process of grossing up?
Correct.
Okay.
Mhm.
And last year we did gross up?
Yes.
Okay. Other people have questions? George?
I thought I understood until your questions went along, and so I thought that the max that you could get was 1,250, but you're saying you can actually get more than one.
So there's
There's the state
There's
program.
state, I understand,
So
but
that's what, 1,250 from the state.
But-
And then what we want to provide is up to the town. And it sounds to me the town's decision starts with, we'll match. And
Oh,
then if there is funding beyond the match, we will prorate that funding for those households. Is that the way it
That
is?
is correct.
so people are getting more than a match.
Correct.
I see.
Okay, any other questions? Yep, George?
So, so then the assumption is, and I think this is what perhaps what Brad was asking for, so the assumption then is that based on that, my assumption is that the fund, the 90,000 was more than adequate to fund all the people who applied to the point that you can actually go beyond the match.
Correct.
Okay?
All right. Any other questions?
I'm sorry.
Yes.
So my question then is why is there debate to even go to 100,000 if 90,000 sound like it's more than adequate to actually provide above and beyond the match?
Being the proponent for the 100,000 last year, I could say I didn't fully understand the program. And so what I thought the program was a program, not understanding the state role associated with it, was we determined how many households were eligible and effectively divided those households into the amount of money that was eligible. So given, if you remember where we were in January of last year, Northeast Utilities, Eversource, had just bumped the electric rates like 25%. So we said, let's put some more money toward it. So that's why we did it. With a better understanding, with the idea that 90,000 is already sufficient, I'm not, I'm happy to stay at 90,000. Megan?
Well, I guess my question is, how do we promote that, and do we know we're fulfilling that need? I mean,
Well, we've got two people who we can ask that question
Well-
about.
Not only that, but the chairman brought that up last year, and I wrote about it in Saybrook Events. And as you go by the assessor's office, they have a sign there for applications. So, and I don't know if it's promoted through social services and YFS, we'll hear, but we do talk about it, and it's a good question. Whether it's serving the need, I don't know.
No.
But we've had it for years. You know, I think there has to be some assumption that people are aware of the state program. It's not like this is some unique local program. This type of tax relief is out there, and I'm assuming people who would be eligible for that type of benefit are, do avail themselves of it and are aware of it, but we may not be serving everyone. I'm not saying we are.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
yeah, well, my curiosity, I mean, if we're talking about, the assessments going up on that, and we're talking about our aging community in Old Saybrook, I just wonder if we want to make sure that that money's there, and I mean, could we have it there, and then if we only get 69, 70, just decide to just match it and then take the rest of it back? I mean, my concern would be that, you know, if we only say we want 70 and then 90,000 worth of folks for a potential match come in, right, then we're short.
Operationally, can we do that?
So just give them the match.
So,
What you're saying,
so we would recommend a number tonight. The town would provide the match,
not to exceed.
and should there be, is the match less than that, then we just roll that back toward, whatever excess there is at the end of the year.
You can do that.
Okay? Matt, did you have a question? Or you are appearing, you look like you need a question.
Yeah, I agree.
Working through the variations here. I'm good. My earlier question got answered.
So I guess I'm unclear what's going on. So we're saying a match not to exceed 90 or?
No.
No.
So what I think, just to put words in Megan's mouth, is the way the program runs is eligible to state program, 1,250. Town steps up, will match the 1,250. Put all of that match into a pot. And if that match does not equate to the amount that we've set aside, whatever the balance is that we've set aside just becomes excess. We don't up it.
Gross it up.
Right.
Okay.
And if it were to be, let's say this hasn't happened, but if we put aside 90 and it came in at 100, we would then, what we do operationally is the opposite. We prorate it so that everybody gets that
We
amount.
don't exceed.
Don't
90.
exceed, we don't
We
exceed.
prorate it down.
Right.
So now I have a question on this stretch.
Yeah.
So with last year's model where we were prorating that extra 20, were we doing that based on those that were at the lowest end of the spectrum getting, did it go across everybody that applied evenly? Or did it go proportionally based on income range?
Evenly, it was
Okay.
evenly.
So I'm gonna just weigh in very quickly here. I would say the town has appropriated 90,000 to 100,000 for years. I think if you are eligible for this, we assume we're not gonna collect this revenue. I don't know why we wouldn't just gross it up and expend the $90,000. That's my 2 cents, as opposed to taking $20,000 back to the town. That's what I understand. My 2 cents is gross it up, expend the 90,000. We're assuming we're not collecting it. The town's in a good financial position. We're not scraping pennies here. My 2 cents.
Regardless of applicants, right?
Yeah, I mean, we get a healthy group of applicants. I mean, many of the same people apply every year. Go ahead.
No, sorry,
No, many of the same people apply every year. I mean, it's gonna be between 70 and 90, somewhere in there. I don't think it's gonna be a lot less than that. But this is just like firefighter tax abatement. We're not gonna collect that money. It comes off the revenue. We know we're not gonna collect it. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't expend the 90.
I'm gonna play, I am so naive on this, right? So let me.
Me too.
Let me play this out. So for me, I gotta picture this, a particular person. Let's just say, just John's the family, the property owner, right? So my understanding when this program started, that we will not exceed the payment beyond what their actual taxes, because that makes no sense, right? So if their tax is $2,000, we're not gonna give them $2,500, right? That doesn't make no sense either. So I think it's some proportion, I forget, it's
Yes.
10% either,
Right.
like 9% or something. So we have to assume that their tax is at least greater than 2,500.
Mhm.
And my understanding of what you were saying is correct. Let's say, this homeowner, probably, wouldn't pay up anyway. It's gonna be part of that 1% that we don't collect. And so, we give them the money and they pay us,
A portion of their taxes are.
isn't that a wash? I mean, I don't get that. I mean, but versus we don't pay them, or we pay them 80% or we pay them 100%, we get it back. I'm not sure.
Well, they don't go
Mathematically,
delinquent in that scenario. They go delinquent, I forget what the interest rate is, but it's pretty punitive, and then they'd have back taxes, and, you know, we avoid that situation for them.
But in terms of the actual, that what happened to that $2,500?
But you're assuming that these are people who wouldn't pay their taxes. I think that's taking it one
Oh,
step.
no, I guess, no, but I guess I was just following up on what, because you had mentioned that, I didn't appreciate it.
Well, I said that's a different, I think
I'm
I
sorry.
truly think those are two different discussions. To make an assumption that if they don't get the credit, that they won't pay the taxes, I don't know that that's
I
true.
apologize.
Yeah, no, don't apologize. But, so I know what you're saying in terms of, you know, if they didn't, then we go to collect, it's kind of, you know, but I think that personally, I think it takes the discussion one step farther than we even need to.
Understood, yeah. Understood.
Okay, other comments?
It's the most discussion on elderly benefit we've had in 12 years. I can tell you that.
We all want to understand. All right, I'm going to make a motion. Motion is to approve the elderly benefit amount for fiscal year 2025 in the amount of 90,000, consistent with provision section 12129B of the Connecticut General Statutes. I will add to the motion that, or not add to the motion, but I will simply, as part of, well, let's go to discussion. And then, is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, discussion. I suggest we continue to run the program the way we've been running. And with that, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, thank you all very much. And now, you're gonna go. Heather, are you all set?
Yes.
Thank you for your forbearance. And also, thank you very much for sending the information early, giving us a chance to take a look at it, and feel free to focus on highlights. Yes.
We're all good family here.
I might
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Nice to be here tonight. No. Okay, I didn't break it. Mike Rafferty is the chair person, so, how are you, George? Nice to see you again. Hi, everybody. Okay, we'll get started. And, so tonight, Sue's gonna, present you the social service budget, and I'll do the family services budget. And certainly, happy to take questions at any time.
Heather? do you
Yes.
Mind speaking up just a little
I
bit?
can,
Thank you.
I can, thank you for the reminder.
Is that for me, Matt? Because I usually ask you.
That was for this guy.
I usually need it. Thank you.
Everybody has a copy of the PowerPoint, I'm assuming. So our department budget is up 1.41% over fiscal year 24, led by increases in salary and operations. And you can see the table there. And I think that comes out to about $8,700 total increase. Our budget, the salary budget and the benefits budget, it's over 85% of the total budget. The salary budget's increased, like I said, 1.995%. Going forward. Structure, staffing, and major changes. We haven't really had any major changes. We're a small operation. There's 6 of us in the building. 3 full-time employees. I work 40 hours a week. Full-time clinician works 37.5, and the full-time program coordinator works 37.5. 3 part-time employees. My administrative assistant is 34 hours. Part-time clinician was 28 hours, and last year we got approved for an extra 3 hours through ARPA, so he's at 31. And then the part-time program coordinator was 29 hours. And I'm sorry, the part-time clinician was 28, went to 31. The part-time program coordinator was 29, went to 31. So I just want to go back 1 second in case anything here is relatively new to my spiel about what everybody does, and I won't take up a lot of your time, because some of you are very familiar with it. But the clinicians are involved in instances as well as providing mental health services within the community and at the agency. We do psych-ed groups and informational seminars for the community. The program coordinators are in charge of prevention education as part of our legislative mandate. They do peer prevention, after-school programming, early childhood programming, and then we all organize large community events with other civic organizations.
As part of that, Heather, you have, I'm sorry, I should have sent you a note before the meeting, and feel free to follow up, if you don't have the answer on top of your head. But it'd be interested to know kind of the number of people served and things like that. Yes, you've got the coordinators, but are we serving 5,000 people? How, what's that range?
Sure, I can definitely follow up on that in terms of exact numbers for you. One of the things I'll speak to later is that we did commit to a data process with our regional YSBs and the State Department of Education called DOC. And so we're going to be able to access that data much more quickly than I'm giving it to you right now, but I will follow up with you.
Great, thank you.
I do know how many clinical cases we have. Within a year, we're anywhere from 135 to 200 individual clients. But then the collateral contact is all their family members
Right.
around them. So, yes.
You said the part-time clinician
Mhm.
is partially funded through our fund,
2 hours.
2 hours.
Yeah, no,
Three.
she's 3 hours. I'm sorry, 3 hours. And the part-time prevention coordinator is 2 hours.
And that's for a fiscal year?
It was, yes, it was for the fiscal year.
And that's the 24-25 or the 23-24?
Well, it was for 2
24
fiscal
and going
years.
forward.
Yeah, it was for 2 fiscal years. We're just, we're
Renting
in the
something.
midst of the first fiscal year, and it'll be for the next fiscal.
Okay, so then in the next budget cycle, those won't be funded and we'll have to presumably pick those up.
Potentially. That would be what I'm putting forward.
Now at 31 hours, do they, excuse me, do they qualify for, benefits, health benefits and stuff?
So once you hit 30, under the Affordable Care Act, 30 hours is a full-time job. And so once someone goes over 30 hours, the town has an obligation to offer that single person benefits under the state exchange, and we pay a percentage of the benefits, and it ends up being about 50%, I want to say, of the cost of the exchange insurance for that one person. It's really a relatively minor expense.
I just wonder about the efficiency of bumping an employee up 1 hour into the,
It's
And
not
they pay for
everybody,
benefits.
you'd be surprised, most people don't even take it. It's not a guarantee that once people hit that 30 hours, they're going on the exchange. It doesn't happen like that. That's been our experience.
The clinician, are they seeing, clients that we're receiving any revenue from in terms of income?
Some of them are. We actually have a very small percentage of clients at the moment that are not paying through their insurance.
Mhm.
So we bill at a pretty high.
Okay, because I think kind of going to some of the questions that are asked, not for tonight, but I think for next year, knowing what those additional
Mhm.
hours were directly linked to both the student visits, but then also the revenue that it produces. And, if it's a wash or not, that would be really helpful for us to decide.
Thank you. Okay. George, do you have a question?
No, you got answered.
Okay.
So we did have a discussion in ARPA that, and I'm waiting for Brad to say it, that when we funded through ARPA, we weren't looking to necessarily have the town locked in to those additional hours when funding ran out. And that was a very specific discussion, but to Matt's point, if it's depending on the revenue generation, it might be something to consider.
Well, and also, it was a pilot to some extent because we saw the increased need, and so if we continue to see that increased need, then we have to see what we need to do to respond to it.
Okay.
So some of the department accomplishments are, our involvement with other civic organizations doing health and wellness fair, the Starlight Festival, which is a community, endeavor. Working with the Old Saybrook Police Department to, meet the needs of some of our more underserved community members through the Thanksgiving food donation program and holiday giving. And we work within the school to do, some PD days and wellness days and prevention education with with all three schools. Our LPC, which is a local prevention council, we completed a grant-funded program, a project rather, which was environmental strategy of placing some signs in local town parks and beaches that let people know about the local ordinance around no vaping, no alcohol, and no tobacco use in these areas. We completed a 2-year multi-agency regional training for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that involved training all the directors in the regional area and then all of our staff, as well as the front office staff. That was through Middlesex United Way and the State Education Resource Center. We have increased supports within Goodwin School. We had some requests to go down into grades 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and we've been able to do that this year with the help of some of our master level interns. We're more involved with the high school. We have drop-in 2 days a week, but we're also helping with the drama department and maintaining some of the what we call homeostasis backstage. For anybody who has teenagers who are involved in the drama department, you'll know what I mean by that. So we have an intern training program with master level interns that adds some services to the school at no increased cost. And we added the University of New Haven to our roster this year. The nice thing about that is that some of the universities offer training to our staff at no cost. Our clinical revenue for this past year was approximately $95,000. Cost containment, I wanted to speak to Boost Lingo for a moment, even though it's not on here. To Matt's point, Boost Lingo, it's $95 per month. We've been averaging about 2 to 4 calls per month. To explain to what Boost Lingo is, to anyone who's not sure what that is, it's a translation service where we can call Boost Lingo and ask them to call back a resident who's non-primary English speaking, and then they can translate the conversation for us in a way that's much more effective than if we were to use Google or another translation service. It's actually verbal, and I'm sure Sue will speak more to that when she talks as well. And we committed to adopt to a uniform reporting system for statistics that we actually had to. So all the youth service bureaus in the area used a different form of reporting, and then people would get the data and it wouldn't be able to, it was too unwieldy to really make good use of the data. So now we're all on VOC or Google. And the State Department of Education made that new requirement as part of our funding criteria. So we've been developing programs that utilize community partners more and more, where we had a group over at senior housing today called Cooking and Connection, which were students and senior housing members making some after-school snacks and dinners, and with local businesses as well. And one of the things that we do all the time is assessment of need. That's kind of a continual process. And some of that's what we call anecdotal, but it's in real time. We can respond to an emergency within the community, let's say a recent house fire, or if someone is struggling with addiction or maybe suicide in the family. But then the need for us to do more kind of high-level data collection, I'm planning for this fall to ask the Board of Ed to allow us to do a student survey in grades 7 through 12. We haven't done that since November 2017. So it's long overdue, and COVID interrupted our natural order of doing that. And George, you'll remember those surveys very well. We're doing consistent evaluation of overall programming, streamlining of services, working with other departments like Acton Library or Park and Rec to reduce duplication of services and redundancies. We're increasing certifications and trainings of staff to reduce our dependence on external presenters. It's nice to not have to necessarily pay other people to come and do some of the education that our staff can now do themselves. I do want to stop before I go to the conclusion and just talk about the ARPA request last year for bilingual social worker. I have not been successful yet in finding someone to fill that role, and in my field, it's a little bit what we call a unicorn. It's a position that it's highly sought after in larger cities and at the state level. I am actually interviewing someone next week who has applied. And the idea behind it was because we have a larger population who really needs that kind of I'm gonna call it a warm handoff or a warm handout to include them in school community and other community endeavors, sitting around this table perhaps as a member of a board or commission. And we really felt that was an important ask. And I know that the police department is looking to have us do a kind of a partnership because they find that their data would support needing that as well. So I think it's an ongoing open topic for discussion, certainly. And I will let you know how the interview goes next week. The youth and family budget's projected to increase, as I said, 8,700. The majority of it is salary and benefits. There are no major building or maintenance projects anticipated. It's in good shape, and we have air conditioning in the parking lot, and we're all happy.
We put a lot of money. We put a lot of money into that building over there. It was not a good working environment, and I'm very proud that we made it that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for pushing.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Thank you for supporting it. And then I did come before you last week to talk about potentially updating our van. It's on the older side with high mileage, and we might auction off 2 different vehicles. And
So along those lines, just, I hate to keep interrupting, but I feel like sometimes I have something to add on a lot of these conversations. Tomorrow at 11:30, we're meeting with a purchasing organization. It's not correct. I think it's the Capital Region Council of Governments. And what they do is they do RFPs for an incredibly wide range of services. And so I'm going to ask them about what they might have. We have a couple things out there right now for capital requests that, like pickleball courts. I'm gonna ask them, do you have a resurfacer for pickleball courts? So get a quote. It's already been pre-bid, so I'm gonna ask them about a vehicle also, see if they have somebody.
any other questions before we go to social services?
Well, I have,
Yeah.
if I may,
Yes.
may I say something?
Sure.
I just wanted to talk about the way that this budget is funded. So, if you can see on her last slide, she said that it was up 8,703 or 1.1%. And if you go and look into our budget here, we say that we're going to, appropriate to youth and family services 465,892. So that obviously doesn't equal the full budget. And this is something that we've been working on for a couple of years, so I'm going to stare at you all again. But the way that it's funded is through an appropriation from the town. So in this case, 465,892. They also get grants, which support a lot of the work that they do. That's 42,483. They have client fees of 100,000. And we are going to, in this budget, we have built in $17,000 to come from the income fund. And I know Carl has explained the income fund before, but very quickly at the end of the fiscal year, if they have any money left over, either they collect more revenues than expected, or if they don't spend as much money, we transfer it into the income fund for future years. So we have $124,000, and so we use that to mitigate budget swings. That's why we're using 17,000 this year. Also maybe to contribute toward the purchase of the van, this amount come from that account. So their budget is up 8,703 on the gross $625,000 budget. In the appropriation for the general fund, it's up 17,703. Obviously, it's a smaller base, and we assumed we clearly have the increase in expenses of 8,703, but also that some of the income numbers are a little lower than we assumed last year, so that makes the appropriation a little bit larger. So that I just wanted to make sure that we understand, because this budget is the only one that we budget in that manner.
So a few years ago, that was changed. And why don't we talk about what it was and maybe why we changed it for what it was?
So a few years ago, there was an on-budget account that had like salaries, I think, in there. Then they had like about 6 different off-budget accounts. So you couldn't really tell, I couldn't tell, what did it cost to run our youth and family businesses. So we decided to, instead of trying to bring the grants and the client fees and all of that onto the general fund, we thought that the most efficient way was to take an appropriation and bring it to an off-budget fund. We closed out all of those other accounts. They just have one account now so that everything is, or one budget account. So that everything, all the expenditures are run through that budget, all of the income is run through the budget. And just have a much better, more transparent picture of how Youth and Family Services is run. And it makes it easier to make decisions. So when they would come back and ask for something, they'd be pulling from this account, that account, it was confusing. So it's cleaner, it's much cleaner.
Okay. Matt?
Question, Heather, a couple of questions about grants.
Mhm.
I think that the grants environment has been changing. I think if I remember right, United Way used to be a larger regular contributor to our budget 4 or 5 years ago, and it's really kind of changed the like mission direction that they wanted to go.
Yes.
What does the grant environment look like right now, and how is Youth and Family how are you positioned to be adaptive, or how much is it a challenge?
Sure. So Middlesex United Way has completely gone from our landscape. But so how we're positioned, I think we're holding steady. The youth, the State Department of Education Enhancement Grant and Youth and Family Services Grant, we get about, I think, 48,000 altogether. I'll have to check on that, but with the enhancement grant. And what they're looking for legislatively is to actually give us a 3% COLA increase every year for that. So they're actually trying to improve that. There haven't been any large significant increases in that in over 30 years. So some of the smaller grants we do pursue. They're, I don't want to sound like I'm turning up my nose at it, but it's a tremendous amount of work for a small amount of money, like $3,000 or $2,000. And some of it would just spread my staff way too thin. So we are looking for some that are a little bit more significant or substantial. So I'll be sitting for my certified prevention specialist exam pretty soon, and then myself and someone else who's sitting for their exam will make it eligible for the agency to apply for some. And prevention is really what the State Department of Education is gearing us towards in the future. So I think we've been positioned in a very good way.
Great, thank you. That's helpful. And then is Youth and Family doing all of its own grant writing for any of those opportunities, or are you relying on other town departments?
We do that. Yes.
Great,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes, late at night.
Other questions people have? There, I've got one that's more, not connected to the PowerPoint, and that is, if you were to kind of look at the trend line over the last 3 years, understanding that in the midst of that was COVID and hopefully coming out of COVID at this point, service need, where are we? Are we trending relatively flat now that we're out of COVID? Are we trending on a hockey stick? What?
Sure. There's actually been an increase in certain kinds of substance use in the adolescent population. And actually what we're learning about now are what we call disconnected youth, which are from the ages of actually 14 to 26. So it's young adults as well. And last year in Connecticut, there were over 119,000 disconnected youth. And so those are folks who've either dropped out of school or not doing well in school, they're unemployed or unemployable. So that's a huge treatment population that I think is, we've had our eye on for a while, but it's really coming into some numbers that are causing people to be very concerned.
And does this budget give you comfort that you can meet that need for Old Saybrook?
Well, I think what happens with our budget is that, the State Department of Education is going to be directing us towards that, but that doesn't mean we're going to stop doing some of the other things that we do to meet our residents' needs.
Mm-hmm.
So potentially at some point, I either have to shift staffing resources or ask for other help. So I haven't gotten there yet. It's down the road, I think, a little bit.
That disconnected youth, is that the Dalio fund that we're talking about right now? That's a big question.
Yes, yeah.
So they're also, so the opioid settlements, that were made, there's money that the town has been getting, I want to say about 18,000 a year, or what do we have? Oh,
We have more than that.
yeah, I know, we've had several payments. I want to say there's about $40,000 in those funds, that potentially, I've been very clear. I mean, it's for prevention. It's going to be directed through Youth and Family Services on how that funding will be deployed. I don't think we've really come up with a plan yet on how to do that.
We are meeting regionally to have those kind of
So-
discussions.
Got it. Thanks. No other questions? We'll jump to Sue.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sue Consolid, and I am the social services coordinator. And I'll speak to you about our budget. So the good news that you'll hear from me tonight is our budget really hasn't changed, although it says 1% up there, that's really just cost of living and stuff that I have absolutely no control over, that just goes out every year. So, we have kept our budget static. We do have some separate ARPA funds that we're working on also. And I am not anticipating asking you for more money at the end of that because we are actively working really hard on trying to decrease the numbers that came in during COVID. I'm happy to say we're not seeing increases in those numbers right now. And we actually have had a very slight decrease at this point. And I'm hoping to continue that trend.
So great job.
Thank you.
Because I know you work hard
Very hard.
and you do a good job. So
Thank you. I appreciate it.
that's the impact.
So when I first took this job, just to backtrack on what Carl was just saying, I kind of got tired of putting my finger in the dike, and it just kept happening and it just wasn't working. So I started looking at like the real reasons and what we needed to do. And jobs is one huge portion of that. Housing is also an issue and taking up a lot of people's income right now. So, I've worked with the affordable housing people that we have, getting our clients into those things. And we're working very hard with Workforce Alliance American Job Center. We ran a job fair this past May, and we're going to run one again this year. It's very well attended. We ran it out of Westbrook Town Hall because we do make that regional. Because I can't get partners from the state to come in for just our town, but I can over a regional endeavor. So we had quite a few employers there, including EV. Also happy to say that so far, 2 of our clients that we directed that way have gotten full-time jobs at EV and are now off of services. So there are other success stories like that as well. But that's, trying to work at the cause of some of these issues rather than just again, put my finger in the dike, because we could do that forever and it doesn't go anywhere and our numbers are quite high. So I'm trying to reduce them. Everything, if you can see, it's mostly salary and service related, for our budget, and everything has remained the same.
One next to it. Think about that. Yeah.
We all have it in front of us.
Okay.
Okay. So I'll just speak, off the top of my head, I don't have it in front of me, but, what we're doing in our department, just so that you know, and I spoke a little bit about that, we work on prevention from, a lot of us in education and in counseling, and some of us remember from our psychology 101 from college, Maslow's hierarchy, the pyramid. I'm working on the bottom of that, making sure people have stability, making sure that they have heat, making sure they have food, making sure they have housing, jobs, all those sorts of things. Without those sorts of things being achieved, it's really hard for that person to then make it to the next level and to be able to actually become self-efficient, which is what we're really working towards. So I do work very hard on that level. We do run a social service help day. And that actually it's actually turned into every 2 weeks, we increased it. So it's actually, we're running it in Old Saybrook once a month, we're running it in Clinton once a month, and we're alternating every 2 weeks so that we have the Connecticut food share truck coming in. And so we can offset some people's food costs, that with the pantry and this is really helpful to kind of keep people afloat, especially with the grocery prices getting really high. And when COVID stuff ended and the ARPA began, the indication for ARPA was basically for us to pick up on and not the government to tell us how to do it all. And so what we're doing is trying to use that funding to get people back on their feet, like we want. And again, that was part of increasing the social service help day. At social service help days, we also have Husky Health coming in from the state, explaining to people about what their benefits are, how they do it. We do the signups ourselves. They won't do that for us, unfortunately. But we do have them there to explain what all their benefits can do and how they can access them, which has been really helpful. We also have Connecticut Dental Health Partnership. That's also through the state, where we're giving out dental supplies. We did have a dental clinic running, and we had that 3 months out of the year. And we were unable to do that during COVID because they stopped doing it. And we're trying to get that back on board now. And well, that would come into play during the summer months because it's actually part of the in-school program. And we tried that some years back. It didn't work out really well. I think mostly due to stigmas and whatnot. And so we put it in the Social Service Health Day at Grace Church, and it was very successful there. And so we're working to get that back on board also. But right now we can actually help people. So for instance, CHC will do like a sliding scale for those folks who don't have dental insurance once they hit a certain age. So the youth are usually covered. We have just explained how to access those services. And then as they get a little older, we have to maybe help them with $30 copay or something like that. And we've actually, we've had the Public Health Nursing Board has helped us with some smaller grants. And we've outsourced some other grants as well. The grants, I haven't outsourced any other grants lately, just because, again, they have dried up, as most people know. And the focus is mostly on, that we do have the ARPA funding, so I'm trying to put focus on trying to get those folks off programs rather than trying to figure out how to get them program money. And so that's pretty much what we're up to.
So there may be a copy of the slides in that package right at that part.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Thank you.
You covered a lot of it now.
Yes, that's okay.
Just in case there was a point in the slides that you wanted to make sure you made. Paul?
Yeah, I just have a quick question, and excuse me, but I'm anal about numbers.
Sure.
But your budget overview, fiscal year 24.
Back on the first, on the slide earlier.
Yeah, you got on that, then you went back to another one, and then you couldn't move it anymore.
Okay.
But by the way I figure, the change from 24 to 25 and the salaries is 2-point-something%. The change in the benefits is 6.2%, and the overall total budget change is 2.3%. Are you figuring it a different way, or am I just confused?
That is not how I came up with that, and Leanne checked those numbers, so I'm not sure how he's figuring that.
Okay, so he's correct. He's correct. You're correct.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, so,
I've
yeah,
gone over that,
right. Not any of that happened.
It's correct in your,
It's,
but it's not here.
yes,
Not on the slide.
it is not on the side, it's correct.
In the budget.
In the budget.
Okay.
No, yeah. It has something to do with how the template came through, and it's our error, I'm sorry. But we have not increased our hours.
Yeah.
We have not increased,
Well, that's a minuscule increase, and it's just that in my previous life, I've become
that's
anal
fine.
about numbers.
He watches these kinds of things.
You mean as chairman of board of finance or?
Even more previous.
More previous. Sorry. Too soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And I have no control over the benefits. You guys give those to us.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Are there other questions? Mr. Gifter?
Thank you for your presentation. This is the first time I actually heard the social services present, and so several comments. One, that's a kudos to what you do. I did appreciate it. This department existed, and so I'm very, very impressed. Quick question, because I mean, there's a lot of programs you support, but also it feels like you also support monetarily as well, and that does not come out of the operation, does it? There must be some other way that you're funding a lot of the programs.
So there is state funding that we're accessing. So for energy assistance, we're accessing approximately, and I'm not positive this number this year, but I'm gonna say about 122,000, for instance. We have a heat program that we still have about just shy of $10,000 left in right now, but we haven't been doing fundraising again throughout COVID, but we do have some ARPA funding that made up for that. And we do have, so the state is supplying, so we're helping, if you come in my office and you're out of work and you need everything, right? We start with, we get you on the, what used to be called food stamp program, that's SNAP. And that's according to your family size, so that's help. Then we tell you about the pantry and the food truck and the meal sites and everything else. So most people are not wanting for food in our area, which is great. The other thing that we're doing, is we're gonna make sure that you're on Husky, you know, the state insurance, or that you're accessing the Access Health Exchange insurance if someone else in your family is making an income while you're not, but you're still lower. And we can, you know, take care of all of those sorts of things. We get you on energy assistance. That's the program that I just talked about that's getting funded through the state. When you run out of energy assistance, we help you learn how to access Operation Fuel, which is a nonprofit, to try to get you funding there. We use our emergency funds after all of that. That's why we've kept them rolling, you know, going forward, because we leverage all of the other funds that don't come from the town first. And I make that a priority with everyone, you know, that we talk with. And then there's a water company program that we can put you on. There's 33 different state programs that we can get you some support through.
Sorry. So I mean, that was the key thing. So I found there is a town funded emergency fund. I'm just trying to get a sense.
There is, yes.
How big is that, you know?
I'm trying to remember now.
Yeah, $5,000 in this checking account here.
Yeah, that's not it.
Yeah,
What the fund
donation
appropriates every year a certain amount for my budget, just for those sorts of emergencies. It's not a lot, 11,000, yeah. We have not,
Oh,
we
in the
actually,
budget, yeah.
yeah, we had more at one point, and then we did decrease it because I was able to write and get some grants. Right now, we have the ARPA funds. I don't anticipate needing more of those funds right now. And again, I'm trying to decrease our numbers, and hopefully we'll come back to where we were instead of, you know, getting higher.
But this 18,000 operational, it's something else. It's just to keep.
$11,000. It's under, it's called other supplies, probably not
see.
very, descriptive, but that's $11,000 is for.
And I'll give you an
Whatever
example.
she
I
wants
just
to
bought
for.
something today, for instance. I had an elderly gentleman who has like very little social security income on disability. It's under $1,000 a month, living in a one-room apartment. And his mattress had springs coming out of it, and I got him a mattress today. So that's the sort of thing that might come out of that fund, because it doesn't really fit any of the other stuff.
And this one is, it's gonna be on finance, so I apologize to the group. And so it's, but this is so reminiscent of the discussion we keep having at the schools, right? I mean, there's a sense from the outside that Old Saybrook is this incredibly wealthy town by the ocean, right? So the south, and that's actually not true. And so you actually look at the school population, there's a rather large school population that is on Husky or in need, right? So it's not like there's also a percentage of town the same way, but I have absolutely no idea what that number is, right? I have a pretty good idea what that.
So I can give you some general numbers. The reason that we are able to have the dental program I spoke to you about is because the state has those numbers. And in order for us to have that program, we have to exceed 25% of our student population on Husky. And we do exceed that. We're probably closer to the 30% mark. And that's quite a lot. Those are all kids in need. So that's almost a third of our population. And while that seems like it doesn't make a lot of sense, in Old Saybrook, it kind of does. We've had a lot of folks, a lot of families struggled through COVID, a lot of them. And I was actually surprised at how many folks that we had coming on board during COVID. that were not getting on. And then we do have a very large increase in an immigrant population that I think people are just not really well aware of. And most of those folks are in need because they're just starting off in this country.
But your population goes beyond families with children. Right?
Yes,
I mean,
and our
because-
elderly. So our elderly, you know, Old Saybrook has a really disproportionate number of elderly in our town as opposed to most towns. And quite a few of our elderly are struggling also. You know, the woman usually lives longer than the man. So the man dies, the woman's there, she didn't make a lot on her social security, there was 2 incomes, now there's 1 from the social security, you can't live on that. And that's predominantly what we're seeing being the problem.
And I'm assuming you also help people, apply for Medicaid, is that?
Yes,
part of the position?
Medicaid, so Medicaid is Husky
Mhm.
in the state of Connecticut.
Mhm.
But it's also the MSP program on top of Medicare, it's Title 19. It's Husky A, B, C, and D, and then another special letter.
And very time consuming.
All of it's time consuming, and every single application is easily an hour. And, I've told everybody before, I wouldn't even need to have a job if the government worked smoothly and we didn't have to do all of this, but it doesn't. There's
No one
always a
comes in
problem.
for just one thing, yeah, multi-layers.
Yeah, it's like a spider web. When someone comes in, so sometimes people will come in with the first or second problem, but almost always they're coming in when everything has become a disaster. And they're trying to figure out like, how do I get my head above water and breathe right now? So it's a lot. It's a real lot. We had a very busy week last week. It was insane. I think just in one day, we did like 2 or 3 energy apps. I think we did 3 SNAP apps. We had a homeless call. We had a water application. We had the gentleman called us about the mattress, which I ended up taking care of today. So somebody that runs into other days. There was more. I can't even remember. It was a wild day.
Thank you.
Other questions? People?
The heat program, I recall years ago, pre-COVID, they used to do a lot of fundraisers and the
Yes.
pasta dinner at Fireman's
Yes.
Field. Is that coming back anytime? or-
So I did, email Matt Rubin, spearheaded that. Matt's getting older. I think we need some other folks to maybe get on board with that. I didn't make a big push on that this year, because I did, out of respect, give him, the opportunity. I didn't hear back about it. So I think, going into next season, as ARPA is going to be starting to dry up, we can start revamping that up, but I'll probably be looking for some other volunteers for that committee.
And from the fuel assistance side of things, we keep reading about all the cuts at the state level and those kinds of things. It just, are we doing okay at this stage of the game based on?
So no, what's been helpful is our winters have not been as terrible as they might have been. That's really the only saving grace here. So basically what happened was so many people during COVID met the criteria to get energy assistance. So just kind of backtracking, that comes from the federal government. So the federal government passes a certain amount, then they send it to the state government has to pass it, and then it's called the light heat program at federal level. And then we go ahead and we can expend those funds, and they use the CAA, which is a community access agency through, it's an arm, it's like outsourcing of DSS, which is CRT in our area. So what happens, and again, I mean, I don't know exactly, but this is the problem with applications, because it has to be all these different agencies besides, and all their different software, by the way. So anyhow, what happened is that when the federal government allocates a certain amount, it's like chess. Government doesn't look 5 moves ahead like it ought to. It only goes one year ahead, and they didn't give enough, right? They used past years. So what ended up happening this year is that the state of Connecticut got a lesser amount of money than the amount of applicants coming in, which have increased probably 40% or so. Ours have maybe increased more than that at the town level. And then what happened is that there's a certain amount of money, so they have to divide that among how many people have applied. So there's a tier system, there's a 5-tier system, and depending on what tier you come in at, so it's begin with at 60% median income. And if you're lower than that 60% median income, you might be on a tier that gets a little more money, but at the 60% median income level, which is like 40-something thousand for a single person. So when you're talking about a family of 4, I think is around 100,000. So this is a lot of people. A lot of people meet that 60% median income tier. But they used to get, say, an initial allocation of maybe $395 to maybe $575, something like that. And then on top of that, they got a crisis benefit of about $300. And on top of that, there were about 4 safety nets, which could, bring somebody into the $2,000 to $3,000 range of energy help for that year. So what's happening this year is we're starting out with like $195. It's not enough to get a 100-gallon delivery, so it flips over into the crisis benefit. The crisis benefit is not guaranteed at $300. So it just fills that gap to get the 100 gallons out there. The rest of it's reabsorbed by the whole program again. And there it ends. There are no safety nets this year. So we have seen quite a few people already starting to do the applications for Operation Fuel, which is a private nonprofit, and that is usually will pay out about $500. And again, we have to look at what are the oil prices. So it's going to be, how cold is it? What are the oil prices? So the oil prices aren't as terrible as they were. They're still terrible, but they're not as terrible as they were. But electricity has gone up quite a bit for the folks that are heating with electric. Propane has gone up quite a bit as well. And those benefits have been less. So I anticipated kind of a tsunami coming in had we had the normal average temperature range, which you can see on your phone. It'll tell you that we're actually above, like, I don't know, 4 or 5, degrees more than we normally are. And that's been the saving grace so far. But it is starting to come in now, and we're going to start seeing those folks needing that income from that. The other problem, which is, comes from that too, is that these folks have traditionally, for years, like I've been doing this job for a lot of years, have always been able to meet their needs through these programs, with maybe just that last bit from us. But that's just not going to be the case this year. And I've done a lot of trying to educate folks that this is not the case, get their applications in early to make sure they're saving money for, doing their part, to get that filled also. That we're not going to be the only people being able to do this. That this is going to be it's going to be a struggle. And that's part and parcel of trying to get folks back from the pre-COVID through what happened during COVID and back on track, realizing these programs have also changed as well.
It would be very helpful if in that May 15th timeframe, when, hopefully a lot of the winter heating is over, either you come back or send a report in about what happened this winter.
Yeah.
Because as you heard at the beginning of the meeting, we may be in a position in the late summer with some surplus that we may want to dedicate if in fact that tsunami is hit, on the expectation that we don't have enough in our budget right now.
So I did actually ask for that in ARPA funding. So I probably won't have that problem this year because I do play chess 5 moves ahead.
No, I understand, and being involved in ARPA, I remember that it's there. But as we were talking, ARPA runs out, so it's.
It's true. I mean, and that's possible, and I don't know when it's gonna bring. Other years, as we all know, because you see it in the paper, you see it in the news, whatever, the state somehow pulls something out, at the 11:30 hour, and we never know.
Right.
I prepare for what is supposed to be happening, and then sometimes, boom, they say, oh, we're extending this, or we're doing this, or we're doing that. I don't anticipate that with this particular program.
By mid-May, they'll have gone home with anyone, and so we'll see where we are.
Yeah, and hopefully it stops snowing.
Okay, any other questions? George?
Again, most of my questions is probably related to how impressed I am in terms of what you guys do. My quick read is your department has 3 people, and 2 people are at best part-time, perhaps, maybe?
So actually, we have 2 people.
Oh, 2 people.
And so
Okay.
the
One
third
person must
person
be-
is Heather. So she's
Oh, I
a
see.
supervisor. Then there's me. I'm at 37.5 hours, and then I have the assistant.
I see. Oh, okay, because I guess you have a coordinator, assistant coordinator on your.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, are you guys adequately staffed to manage both services and keep track of all the
So you can never be adequately staffed, but, you know, we try to stay within a budget to be able to do what we can do. I think that we're doing a pretty good job within what we've got. I do work like a hamster on a wheel, and I'm kind of a multitasker. When you lose me due to old age, that may change, I don't know, but right now, we're being able to keep up with it. The other reason we're being able to keep up with it is I've looked at the efficiency side of it. My job was corporate America before I came here, so it was business oriented. And what I tried to do is get rid of things like paper files and things that just take forever and mailing things and all of that. So we've done a lot of streamlining. I do have an online compliant database everything goes into. So if somebody, if you called me and you've called me before, I can, right while I'm talking to you, pulling you up, see everything we've done before, see what your situation is, bring it up to speed, see, oh yeah, here's something else we can do, you know, like that. So there's a lot. We try to be as efficient with our time as possible that way. We use computer systems a lot. And like I said, have a database, and also, a lot of these applications now are doing online. And instead of us doing all of them, which we used to do, I've been working really hard, which was a bit of a, you know, a bit of a struggle, and it's a bit of a time constraint, you know, on our part. But again, the ARPA funds are helping fill in for that, because we do have some administrative that I'm using for a few hours on the ARPA. And what I'm trying to do is teach people to do their own. So with those, like for instance, when they go to Operation Fuel, unless somebody is disabled, unable to use a computer, too elderly to do it, we encourage them, go to the library, learn how to do it, do your own application, put your stuff in there, because a lot of people can do these things now. We're trying to teach them and enable them to do it, which is saving us a lot of administrative time and is good for them.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Right.
Other questions, people? Brad, just want to make sure you're all set.
All set.
Perfect, thank you very much. Heather and Sue, thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it. Now, on our agenda, we had left the opportunity for any other budget discussion you wanted to have. I don't know, Leanne, if there's anything more you would like to add.
What I wanted to just ask is if there is any, so we have one more meeting coming up on February 6th before the selectmen are going to take a look at their version of the budget. So if there's anything that you want me to prepare, that maybe some questions that you've asked, or that you want any data that points that you would like to be brought back, if you know now, you can let me know. Otherwise, just email me and I will prepare it for our next meeting.
One thing, you ran through, quickly on Saturday morning, and I, didn't have a chance to jot it all down. I could go back and watch the tape, or if you've already written it down, you just went through kind of what all the additions to the budget were, and, you know, there's 15, 20 of them or something. So if that's written down somewhere, that would be great to have.
I'm sorry, but I don't know what you mean.
Well, when you kicked off on Saturday morning, you were, said, here's the thing that we've added from last year into the next year's budget.
Okay.
This year and the next year's budget. So it was 10, 15 items.
Yeah.
So just
The operational one.
Correct.
Yes, okay, that's easy. Yeah.
Right, easy.
George?
I appreciate this item on the agenda. So is it just a general, any questions? Wow, thank you so much.
I'll leave it for you.
Thank you so much. And so, there's a couple of things that we discussed last Saturday morning, which really struck me. Some of these gonna be so off left field, right? So, $750,000 to keep a fire hydrant going, that almost blew my mind.
Actually, we just got the water, we get every year from Connecticut Water, they tell us what to expect. And we got that, I gave that to Leanne this morning, in fact.
But that's not water use.
It's not, it's just to keep
Just
water.
to
in the
keep water,
hydrants.
yeah, but it's not even the water, I mean, so it's not
They
because we're.
charge us for the hydrants, they charge a per hydrant fee,
Right,
and then
right.
they charge a fee for the access to the water, so there's actually two pieces, so.
Right, I'm not,
Yeah.
you know, I get it, I just start thinking, right, you just mentioned.
The state approves that they put those in their rate applications.
Right.
And the state, approves, those kinds of charges. It's
Sure.
like the electric company.
It's a PURL.
They charge you for the line that runs
Right,
from the
right.
pole to your house.
Yeah, it's PURL. It's a
Yeah,
utility.
so it's not the water company per se.
And not meant to be, go and do the research, but it's just, just thinking, right, it's just what percent of the town is actually covered by fire hydrant? Because clearly there's some parts which are not, and so either the fire in a place where there's no fire hydrant, the fire department can still manage. And how they're managed, and, at this rate, we just say you basically pay 1.4 million for 2 fire trucks, and so we're buying basically a fire truck almost every year on the fire hydrants, right? So maybe not quite, maybe a fire truck, maybe $1 million. But it's just, at some point, which is, what is that balance? Was it just forget the fire hydrant, we're just gonna basically buy a whole bunch of fire trucks that basically will put out fires when there's no.
Well, having fire hydrants actually affects your homeowner's insurance.
Oh,
also.
okay, that's the other thing I was thinking about. Maybe
So,
start
yeah,
hacking those guys.
There'll be no forgetting the fire hydrants. And the way, and I don't say that to be funny, but, the way fires are, when we have a fire, and thankfully it's somewhat rare, but we just had a fire on Ayers Point Road. A few years ago, there was one off Ingham Hill Road, Pheasant, like the first house on the right, I think it was Pheasant Hill. Pumper trucks, trucks that come in with water. And, there was that really bad fire in Chalker Beach a few years ago, and they had to run lines, really long lines from Route 1 all the way down to the beach, down Chalker Beach Road. So they manage, they do an amazing job. Obviously, there's a lot of, a pumper truck might come from Westbrook, might come from, I don't even think we have a pumper truck. So that would be a mutual aid thing. So they're prepared for that, but was that a question?
No, it's just in terms of just, at that rate, right, where we're paying $3 million every year, it opens up possibilities of other way of thinking about how to. But
it actually doesn't. I hate to tell you, it really doesn't. I mean, when I first got elected, I called Connecticut Water in. I'm like, how do we work on this charge? How do we get it down?
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you mean? You can't get it down, like.
Somehow get the people to get a break on their homeowners insurance for 20 years. The other question I had, so, completely off topic. This is the people on defined benefits, who are not there yet, right? So they're not collecting yet, because once they start collecting, they've essentially annuitized, right? But if you haven't started collecting, what I meant by buying them out, right, is I was thinking about this a little bit more. I believe that in a high interest environment, the lump sum payment is actually less than in a low interest environment.
That's correct. Yeah.
And so I believe right now we're in a higher interest environment. And so the math can be done in terms of what it is at the point saying you either take an annuity or you take a lump sum. It will cost us, but if they take the lump sum, it is a defined cost over.
I think that's actually in our policy, and I'm going to check that. I will check that for you for our defined benefit plan that they could. We have paid off. Now we have that police officer that wanted to cash in early because he wasn't old enough, but he was vested. So we do have that available now. We don't have a program for it. We don't encourage it. We don't do anything like that. But I'll look at the policies to see what the opportunities are, because I think it's maybe already doable.
I see.
Yeah. So are you talking about a voluntary, or are you talking about telling people, we will buy you an annuity, or you can take this lump sum?
You're not buying them an annuity, we're funding that annuity in perpetuity, right? So,
Right.
But yes, no, it's a gamble on their longevity.
Actually, you're talking about people who are not collecting yet.
Not yet.
Right.
No, once they collect, it's over.
So that would also affect union workers, so I'd probably have to, it could be a subject of collective bargaining also, that I may have to address to even, because it is in their contract, but, I mean, they're union members. I mean, I don't see why they would, as long as they had an option to say no to it. But I don't know that I could force them.
Yeah, right, of course. But the ones who took it, there's a variety of reasons for taking
Yeah.
a lump sum.
Sure.
The ones who took it will take those liabilities off the books.
Sure.
In perpetuity.
Yeah.
Is this the kind of discussion that is, done or could be done at the pension board?
Yes.
And it seems to me there, you got a bright group of people there that could take a look at something like that.
You know, one thing we've done in the past also is, perhaps after this board proposes a budget that goes to referendum, there's a period of time, at least there was last year, I'm not saying there will be this year, prior to referendum, prior to the annual town budget meeting and referendum, there could be a month or 6 weeks or something along those lines where maybe Becky Seelman at Milliman is willing to come in, or you have a joint meeting with the pension board.
Yeah.
Or at least with several members of the pension board. I don't know if they'll all come in or not, but, anyway,
Yeah, you know, you just looking out, I think that, depending on what comes back with the first study, I mean, there could be a number of reasons why having a joint meeting with the pension board would be a good idea. So, also, what I'm thinking about and listening to a number of George's comments would be that we get through the budget season and then there's a whole series of issues that we can just, do as agenda items and just, go through the summer or the fall as we, that'd be good. All right. Question?
That's the other one. I mean, and I think I don't want to just belabor the social services presentation, but I think it brought up with economic development as well, right? And I think it was someone else, or maybe it's Park and Rec, right? There's all this, every department has the option to apply for grants and so on, right? And at some point, I think Park and Rec could say, there were grants they could apply to, but they were, relying on Jennifer to help write the grant, and Jennifer always writes for a grant and so on. And Susan's her name? Sue needs grants and so on. And my comment there was, at some point, you pay someone in town to write a grant, but if you get the money in, it almost pays for that person, right? And so what is the return on paying someone to actually write the grant versus not be able to go after the grant because you don't have the personnel, right? And so what is that ROI, right, for that person? And it'd be a shame if after a point, there's this huge amount of grant that we can't go after because we don't have the personnel in terms of what's the balance, right?
so I think our staff is very well aware of the grants that are out there. And if there is in fact a need to apply for a larger grant, a grant that's worth it getting or applying to, the resources will be allocated. I don't know that, like Heather was saying, $2,500 grants, not to stick her nose up at it, but it may not be worth it when we can apply for a $30,000 grant and put some time towards it. I think Sue is dealing more in a world of making sure that, we're positioned, or the person is positioned to get state aid. I don't know how many grants Sue actually writes and tries to get, or has even brought any to our attention. And if she did, I'm sure we help her get the resources. Having a grant writer, so the Council of Governments is regional. There's 16 or 17 towns in our Council of Governments. We have talked over and over about getting a grant writer, getting funds through the COG to have towns access a grant writer. And that is on the table again this year to provide that assistance. But I think we're in a pretty good place for grant writing. I do. I didn't hear anything really differently from either one of them. So.
Good, Matt?
Comment, and this isn't intended as anything like necessarily direct, like single action or line item, but we're getting close on the Mariners Way Economic Development Study to final recommendations. I apologize, I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, but we're looking at some draft implementation strategy. And I would just hope in the next several weeks before we move to a final budget, that we have some thought in terms of what money we want to put into the budget for next year, so we're not sitting for a year waiting to actually fund some of the strategies.
Potential two sources of funding. One of them is the TIF monies that we put aside every year.
Yep.
And strangely, the second one is would be the proceeds that the town will receive through the cannabis operation over there. One of the accepted uses is infrastructure. In addition to prevention and all that. The conversation I had with Ben Zacks, who's, I'm not sure exactly what his position is, but he's one of the owners, I think, of Feinfeld and that string of stores. They're the largest, I think I said this to you, largest taxpayer in Newington and Willimantic. So interestingly, that started in January, so we will see that money start coming in. And I'll have a pretty good idea of what that funding looks like. I think there's gonna be money available, Matt, to actually implement some of the strategy.
Great, yeah, I just want to make sure that we're positioned to do that.
Yeah.
We're not saying, okay, now we have to wait till next budget cycle.
Nope, I don't believe that will be the case.
Okay. Next agenda item is public comment. We have lost the public inside. We have one attendee. If that person would like, please raise your hand. Otherwise, we will move on. All right. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.
All in favor, please say aye. Thank you very much.